Hi, it's Kareem here again on Does It Matter? Today I'm going to talk about probably a fairly unpopular subject with most people, suffering. It's something we all do. It's unavoidable in many cases at least, and it punctuates our life often in ways that we rarely ever want to reflect on. But it has hidden value. It isn't a mouthful of razor blades. It isn't. It isn't needless. It isn't necessarily wasted, depending on our reaction to it. It's also easy to make worse. It's remarkably easy to make your suffering worse if you don't work hard to discover, understand yourself, do what you should do, find meaningful activities, discipline yourself, your time, wash your body, clean your room, clean your environment, curate your friendships, all these things. If you don't do these things, then suffering becomes much more prolific in your life. It becomes much more likely to occur at a much greater frequency and intensity. Embracing suffering is the only way. Ironically, embracing suffering exposes the Stoic, that Roman philosophy which I espouse, to even further suffering initially, because you are going to change things, and change is painful and difficult, and you will encounter resistance. There's a book called the War of Art, where the author talks about resistance, and it's a really good principle. You will meet resistance the minute you try to change anything. I mean, nature has a homeostatic response to everything. You can't move electrons easily from their valence shell around the nucleus. You can't split that nucleus or add to it without using enormous energies and velocities. There's a price for everything, and it's significant, even down to the micro level, the quantum level. Things cost, and if you're already suffering and someone says embrace that suffering, accept that suffering, go into the suffering, understand the suffering, explore the suffering, you want to punch that person in the face, because you're already in pain. Why would you want to be in more pain? And you will be. You will be. Because exploring the causes of your suffering exposes you to yet more suffering. The things you've done that you haven't admitted to, the things you've thought, the foolishness, the weakness that you've perpetrated upon yourself. And we're very quick to jump on all the things that have hurt us. I've had a fairly difficult life, a very difficult start, very difficult childhood, and as a result, it gave me tons of excuses that I still find occasionally rising to my lips. Tons of excuses to blame everything and everyone around me. And there were legitimate betrayals. There were legitimate grievances. I grew up poor. I grew up abused. I grew up subject to enormous racism and ethnic prejudice. But I still made some really crappy choices in the process. Choices that I had an option to own, and I never fully owned them until I was much, much older. And as a result, there was some suffering that occurred in my life that was completely unnecessary. I didn't need to suffer as much, but I did, because I didn't choose to take that extra bit of suffering by embracing it, by owning it, by taking charge of my life and accepting everything that had happened to it, however unfair, however mean and indifferent, however cruel. And there were lessons waiting for me behind them. Now, a lot of the terrible things that have happened to me, I'm not going to rave on about them, but some of them have made me a person that I like. They gave me the capacity to find myself and like myself. They gave me the capacity to do things that I couldn't do before, that most other people can't do. And I'm enormously grateful for them. Had I not suffered so, I'm very unlikely that I would have gone in those directions. It's very unlikely that I would have tried to plumb the nature of my flawed mind and messed up psychology. I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't suffered. But it was only when I embraced that suffering and continue to work very hard on embracing it as much as I can, that more gems roll out of the mud, roll out of the debris of tragedy that we all experience. Everyone experiences it to some degree, some more than others, but there's a lot of treasure in there. There's a lot of value in there. The advice I guess I could give in relation to dealing with suffering is be open to it. It has stuff for you, and it's going to hurt to swallow it down, but do it. If you need help, get therapy. 100% get therapy. Oh, it's not a magic cure. I've rarely ever been told anything by a therapist I didn't already know. But the perspectives that a therapist or a third person or a friend or a family member or someone who knows you has can, just the angle, the different frame, the different take they have on the same piece of information can be what tips you into a better direction, can be what makes you see something else that might be even entirely unrelated, might not be the area you're talking about with them, but it might give you a sudden insight into another area of your life you're really struggling with. That's called lateralism. That's the unrelated conversation has bearing on another area. The unrelated point has bearing elsewhere, even if it doesn't have bearing relating to what you're directly conversing about. That is the return on suffering. That's your ROI on suffering. And if you reject it, you reject some of the most incredible riches of human experience. I don't like suffering. I really detest it as much as anyone else does. But I will generally go into it hard. I attack it the way I attack most things. I'm a fighter. I've always been a fighter. I'll always be a warrior. And I attack things. If I'm afraid of something, I attack it. The greatest miseries in my life have come from ignoring things that I was afraid of or denying them. It has come from turning my back on the thing I should have faced. And I feel that from what I observe in history and what I observe in the lives of other people, I work in the public and I work with the public, I get to see a lot of people and I get to see their lives up close often, many of the jobs I've done. I see that rejection of suffering, that pushing away of suffering is it's like the worst thing you can do. It's the worst thing you can do. You don't necessarily want to dive in head first. You might need to get some drugs. You might need to get some medically provided psychiatric drugs for a while, so you don't kill yourself, so you don't do yourself harm, so you don't do others harm. But at some point, it's better sooner than later, it's important to start embracing your suffering and finding what you can learn from it, because it's going to happen anyway. Okay, life's going to hammer you anyway. You're not avoiding it. You're just not. You can skip a lot of suffering by learning from the previous lessons, though. I mean, if the hammer hits you once and you learn to sidestep, you're not going to get hit by many hammers anymore. Occasionally you'll get clipped, but most of the time you're going to avoid that hammer. Then will come a slap, then will come a chop, then will come a stab, and you'll have to negotiate those. That's that adaptability, resiliency, adaptability, rinse and repeat that we require in order to grow. And you can't have any of that without some acceptance, some degree of acceptance, and even embracing your suffering. Doesn't make it hurt any less. It doesn't suck any less. But it means you can do something with it. Instead of having a burden on your back weighing you down, you're lifting weights. You're getting strong. Okay? You're boosting yourself. You're not a beast of burden. You're a warrior lifting and carrying the weight that will make you stronger. Learning about it, feeling it, exploring it. Don't just carry it, explore it. It hurts, you say. Yes, it does. Keep doing that. Ignore the pain. Learn from the pain. Understand it. How did it happen? What did you do to contribute to it? What could you have seen earlier? Was it unavoidable? Sometimes it is unavoidable. The truck's going to hit you and that's it. Your time is up. You know, a relationship is going to end and that's it. Its time is up. You know, a job's going to end, whatever it is. And you have to negotiate that with gravitas, the Romans called. Gravitas, dignity, grace under fire. We need that grace, that gravitas, that dignity to face our suffering as warriors. We're a race of warriors. We have spread all over this world and enforced our will upon it. Not always to our benefit, and certainly not to the benefit of others, and that's something that we can adjust and change, and that's for another video. But we have done so regardless. We are powerful, puissant creatures. We are powerful. But we're most powerful when we accept our flaws, we face them, we face our demons, and we save and nourish ourselves within suffering. When we reject our suffering, when we deny our flaws, when we deny our prejudices and bias, we become less. We are weaker because of it. So, rule number 1, get help. Get therapy, talk to friends, talk to family, listen to them. They'll often be wrong, but they'll often be right. You need to be able to sort the wheat out from the chaff. You need to be able to work out what's going to be valuable to you and what is just well-meaning chaff. Okay? Accept love. Use that love. People care about you.